reforms of the Normans was to give England stronger ties to the Catholic Church. You see, in our timeline, William's invasion was actually sanctioned by Pope Alexander II. Despite being officially Christian and Catholic, the Anglo-Saxon Church had some influences from the native cultures that had only recently been converted. There were still many Celtic and Germanic influences within the English Church. The island was removed from the continent in that sense, and the papacy despised it. It was pretty much an island of pseudo-paganism. The last few popes, in fact, wanted something to be done about the Anglo-Saxons, and that's where William came in. This wasn't to say the church had no influence. They did. Years earlier, Alexander II was able to sway the Witan to elect the previous king, Edward the Confessor, a king who would go on to become a canonized saint because of his piety. He was a direct inspiration for Baylor the Blessed. Thanks, George. And while he's still celebrated in two churches today, at the time, his death left open a power vacuum, one that William had to fill. Otherwise, the ironically named Godwinson would rule instead, and the pagan influences would continue. So what's the deal here? Would it really be that big of a deal for the church if Godwinson had won instead of William? Yeah, probably. For one, Godwinson would know the Pope specifically sponsored another rival to depose and kill him. For another, Godwinson did not implement the reforms that the church had been wishing for. So from the Pope's perspective, England was still out of line. Either way, without the Normans, the church doesn't implement massive reforms within England. They don't build new monasteries, and if you really think about it, reintroduce true Latin Catholicism to England. This can go two ways. Either Godwinson or his successors eventually make up with the church and do the reforms the popes wanted at the cost of their own kingly autonomy, but with some nice political points, or this divide between the Anglo-Saxon Church and the Church of Rome gets even greater. Britain isn't just culturally different from mainland Europe without the Norman French. It could be religiously different as well. And that's the more interesting scenario, so I'm going with that. It's possible we could see an orthodoxy-like split from Rome, but with Celto-Germanic elements, much like how the Greeks split with the Latins, gradually distancing over culture until it was too late to mend the differences. The archbishops of Canterbury and York, in a way, become like the patriarchs of the East. Perhaps they become the patriarchs